What's up guys? Today we are going to paint a scene of a rogue archer in the snow forest or somewhere in the north. That's very cool. And this is a speed painting, so it's gonna be pretty fast. The total time that I spent on this painting is about 30 minutes. It will be pretty helpful either you're beginner or intermediate. But if you already know your way around Photoshop and know what you're doing, then you can go ahead and watch this video. But whether or not, just keep watching anyway. If you have any questions, just post them down below on the comment. I usually answer them. So in this one, I start off with the blank canvas with the gradient of kind of a little bit ultramarine blue, but it's really light, so it's a little bit more opaque. And the bottom is super light blue, not totally white, but it's still kind of blue. Then at this point, I'm trying to find the shape and trying to make the background pretty much first. There's going to be a bunch of rocks on the side or darker area on both sides, left and right, and then now I'm creating a silhouette way in the back to creating like a forest or a bunch of, you know, like shape of trees and foliage like in the back, like a really thick and dense jungle. I mean, not jungle, but dense forest in winter. So I'm using a bunch of texture brush. I haven't used any lasso tool at this point, but at some point I might, but I'm not sure if I did on this one. I just did this one on last Friday. So I'm just using a bunch of texture brush, trying to get the shape. And here comes the lasso tool. This one I think is gonna be the tree up in the front. So I'm just gonna create, if you notice the object that are kind of further away, it will have like a less contrast, but as it come, you know, closer to you, then it will have more contrast, or usually most of the time it will get darker. But in this case, it's a snow scene, so snow it's typically white, so it might, you know, if with the light it probably get brighter as it come closer to you, so it's more contrast in that way. But the darker object will kind of get darker, so that's an illusion of that it give off to that it's closer to you. So at this point, I'm just trying to find some cool shape that will lead to, you know, like that will kind of put together the setup to sort of lead the eyes to the viewer point of view. And I usually try to follow the rule of thirds, which is the composition rule. And if you have if you don't know what rule of third is, just type in rule of third and type in my name up on the search, or just go to my channel and you'll find a video about composition and basic lighting and all those kind of fundamental stuff, or the foundation of, you know, painting. And then I'm just gonna create that one more tree. This is like the midground I'm creating. So those black really creepy shape of bushes and branches I tend to put that those are in the foreground. So this one I'm having another layer and creating it in between, so it's gonna be in the midground, and I'm trying to lay down the texture and the value of the tree. This tree is probably thinking maybe a different kind of tree, so it's kind of grayed out and it has snow over it. And then I will probably put the snow up on the foreground tree also, but at this one I'm trying to set up the midground first before I come back to the foreground and set it up, because I feel like I have to kind of set up the overall look of the scene first before I can come into the foreground and add more detail, because the detail in the foreground is it's going to be very important to, like, it will, if you do it wrong, it might distract the eye, so you kind of have to set up the overall look of the scene first, in my opinion. Just kind of my way of working. So now I'm just adding a bunch of snow and adding some shape. Now I'm going to the way back in the background and create some light in the sky. You know, it's probably like usually in the mid. If you look at a bunch of landscape painting, you notice that on the very top of the sky will be darker, and usually the lightest part will be like on the horizon. You know, horizon line usually get the lightest part. but in this case the light got blocked by a bunch of trees in the back. Now I'm just drawing a bunch of random branches, just hopefully something will stick. At this point it's kind of, I haven't done speed painting in snow scene in a while, so and some branches are darker and some branches are covered with white snow, so just kind of alternate between that. And then now I'm going to creating some more shape right behind that tree. Probably this one is right before the backdrop or the background, and I'm just trying to create a texture to kind of giving it a little more light, or a little more shape that are more interesting than, because previously it's kind of like still quite kind of too even. So now I'm trying to break the symmetry and give it a little more asymmetry to both sides. So it's going to be compensation going to be heavier on the left. So it kind of breaking a little bit and adding more light to have the light shine through a little bit more, making the forest in the back a little less dense, and then some shadow and some rock on the ground. Now I'm coming back to the foreground and using eraser to erase and trying adding some snow onto the branches on the front. And at this point I'm trying to think what give it sort of interesting shape, and try to if it's get too clustered together, I'll break it up and having like a big shape and then small shape, and then trying to mimic the shape of the snow that kind of shaping the leaf that kind of fall, and some leaf are frozen. And then some of the snowy part that fall on the leaf might fall into the shadow, so they get a little more gray than white, so it kind of hang in there. And some of the leaf that get hit by the light, then it would be kind of lighter, which is the branch that kind of branch out a little further out, then those will get hit by the light. Or some that coming like really forward, that those might get hit by light too. And then now I'm painting snow on the branch foreground, and more snow on these leafy bushes or foliage. But since the light, I was assuming the light, I'm thinking I'm gonna have the light come from the top right hand side, so on this side you won't get to see that much white on the foliage. It will be a little more gray, and that gray in the bottom is probably work good with it, because it will be the shadow from that tree from the right side of the canvas. And now I'm just putting some shape, trying to get the soldier or the archer and the horse. At this point I'm just kind of trying to find a shape. And if you're not familiar with the subject, doesn't matter what you paint or draw. I'll look at the reference and see what I can look for, and I usually have a folder that's full of reference of horses, because horses are pretty hard to paint, especially in what position that you want them to be in. Are they walking, are they jumping, or are they whatever their activities or what they're doing. So you should have a reference folder for all kinds of stuff, like environment, animals, costume. But a lot of time, if I'm already like familiar with the subject, then I could just paint it, because it's a speed painting. But then if I'm trying to finish a painting, then I would probably have to go look for a reference, so I can make it a little more realistic, like how their gears or their costume or their outfit put together, like armors or some fur or some helmet, But in general, if you're doing a speed painting, you know what you're doing and you're kind of familiar with the subject, then you can just use a silhouette and use light and shadow to kind of get that ideas across without having to put too much detail on it. So now I'm putting in the fur on the soldier guy and adding some his hat, and then I'm gonna have adding some skin tone onto the face, so he's turning to the left or to the shadow side. And then I'm trying to make his helmet, and a lot of you asking me why I paint like so far away. I do paint so far away because I need to know if the lights work in the whole scene. And when you zoom out and you paint, I've seen some people who are really good and they zoom out even more than I do, but the benefit of zooming out is that you can see the overall image and you can make a better judgment of how to put the lighting onto the scene without having to get into too much detail. And a lot of time I think detail is great and all, but at this stage of the painting you shouldn't pay too much attention to the detail. The lighting and the shape and the composition, if you get the silhouette right, you get the shape right, or you convey the whole point of the scene. And just a little, you know, stroke here and there is at this point is probably more of getting it accurate than trying to put too much detail on it. And when you zoom out, you can see it's kind of like when you painting you know, on Altair or live drawing in a painting session. When you look at the model or when you look at landscape, what you're gonna paint, usually you will squint, so, and then, or you will step back and look at your image. So this is kind of like the same point. And if you zoom in too much, or you zoom in way in and you don't see the overall picture, you might get sort of like a tunnel vision, and it will throw you off on the value on the overall image. Like if you like notice yourself, like sometimes you zoom in and you're trying to work on detail too much and you zoom out, then a lot of time I would suspect that the image wouldn't work. You're like, how come this value is here? So when you're trying to arrange the value or the lighting of the image, then it's probably safer to work from far away or work from zooming out. So that's that. I've seen a bunch of questions there. And also about the brushes, you can download my brushes at the end of the video. I'll have the link there. And here I'm trying to give a cast shadow with it. I give it a little bit more blue on the cast shadow, which I should have done it the same thing in the beginning, but I didn't think about it. And now I'm creating a trail, like when the horse walking across the snow, it should have like some you know, the horse, the hoof, the footstep, or the you know, the hoof step or something, so that be a snow trail that there, so it create a light and shadow, and then some snow coming off and it get more light, and some the hoof creating a hole into the snow, so it's creating a shadow because the light couldn't get in there. So that's what I was doing there. And then I'm trying to create more texture onto the ground and creating more tree in the back, adding some, giving it more shape, and see if it would work. Just kind of trying to wrap things up at this point, and then adding more foliage, more shadow, more foliage over there, maybe a little bit more snow. Then I'm gonna add some, so I'm gonna have the mid-ground kind of have a little more light onto that, because like, since if you see on the right hand side, that's foliage of that tree and branches will kind of block the light, so it will be kind of slightly darker on the foreground, and then it's probably in the mid-ground on the right hand side have space that the light will come and shine through, so in the mid-ground it will be kind of lighter. So anyways, and now I merge everything down, and I'm using a dot, I didn't merge anything, I just merge the background, and I leave the character on top, and I use some dodge tool to dodge the light in the background a little bit. And now I'm coming to the foreground, create some kind of dust or snow dust, something like that, and then some particles and some snow splash when the horse is walking on snow, so just a little bit here and there, and some foggy element there, because sometimes the snow powder has that, you know, if you walk into the snow or go skiing, you see like powder splash everywhere, or some kind of foggy effect. All right, well, I think this is almost the end of it. And then I still have some more time, so I just add a little bit more branches and snow to the branch and some contrast onto the snow, so to give it a little more closer to the audience effect onto those branches, and some branch on the ground and some more branches pointing out, and then maybe some more foliage. So I have 30 minutes to make this one, so I have to use, you know, whatever I can see that I can fix, then I'm just gonna put them on there. So anyways, so this is pretty much it.